Depression is the largest cause of disability worldwide. At worst, depression can lead to suicide. In humanitarian emergencies, 1 in 5 people are affected by depression and anxiety. Depression and anxiety lead to a global economic loss of $1 trillion per year. On average, just 3% of government health budgets is invested in mental health. Depression can be prevented and treated at relatively low cost. Treatment usually involves talking therapy or antidepressant medication, or both. If you think you have depression, talk to someone you trust. Seek professional help. Depression. Let's talk.
Welcome to Pretoria Psychologist Annual Symposium on Mental Health. In keeping with Access for All, we are bringing you information for access to free services, to services close to you that, do not even need for you to be moving from your chair, so such as teletherapy, virtual therapy, free support groups. So this is what we'll be unpacking throughout this symposium. We will also be demystifying, issues around who gets to access, the cultural barriers, the contextual barriers around mental health. We'll also be having a series of interviews with interviewees from different walks of life who will be also unpacking this as real life case studies to be able to talk about their own experiences in walking this path, especially in the context of COVID-19. So I am delighted to be hosting this year with my fellow colleagues that will be coming throughout as panelists, and I hope you will find this information very useful and helpful throughout the end. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to all those engaging in our symposium that is geared towards providing awareness on mental health. My name is Mbewe, a counseling psychologist in private practice. The theme of our symposium is about exploring how COVID-19 has affected the mental health of people in different career fields. Within the first segment of our symposium, we will be exploring stigma in relation to mental health, and more specifically looking at stigma within Black and disadvantaged communities. In this segment, I'll be unpacking this topic with a fellow healthcare practitioner, Mrs. Sarah Marule, an occupational therapist in private practice and specializes in medical legal practice. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you for availing yourself for this segment.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. I think to get us started, let's look at the basics when we are referring to mental health and stigma, okay? Mm-hmm. And let's start by exploring what your understanding of mental health and mental illness would be.
Okay, from my understanding, I think mental health is the ability to cope mentally in terms of like your everyday life issues and the stresses that we come across every day. So the ability to cope with that, I think that just goes to what mental health is all about. Yes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. I think I strongly agree with what you're saying, because in that regard, we're really looking at resilience and coping with mental illness. But a large misconception of mental illness within communities is that mental illness is something to be avoided, something to be ashamed of, and something to sort of be left in the shadows and not discussed openly And
Yes.
mental health refers to a variety of disorders that people could
Mm,
be
mm, mm.
living with or experiencing in their day-to-day lives. It isn't just your more severe psychopathology, which would include
Yes.
schizophrenia, any personality disorders,
Mm,
but it
mm,
also
mm,
includes your more adjustment and mood related disorders. So your
mm.
depression, your
Mm.
anxiety and trauma disorders. So
Yes.
mental health is a very real and lived experience in our
Mm,
communities, and
mm.
often very overlooked when it comes to our holistic well-being. And I think it's very
Yes.
important to also outline and discuss these issues and
Mm,
explore um, mental health so that we are able to understand and recognize what mental
mm.
health is, so that we are able to provide each other with the necessary support, be it
Yes.
as family, be it as professionals, just so that people are able to feel they aren't alone in what they are experiencing.
Yes, yes, true.
Mm.
And what you said there, you said something about that we avoid it. And
Mm.
most of the time we do avoid because of the stigma. And I
Yes.
think also a lot of people in our communities is the lack of understanding of what mental health is. Yeah,
Mm.
so that's
Mm.
very important. Yeah, yeah.
Mm. And I think what you're touching on there is also important for us to explore, because stigma
Mm,
isn't just, the avoidance of,
mm,
but it also includes a a fear of something. And oftentimes, when we look at individuals and experiences, it's this deep sense of fear when it comes to engaging with certain things, a fear of
mm,
change, a fear of the unknown that creates the stigma. So even if
mm,
we're looking at COVID-19 in
mm,
as a pandemic itself, the fear that has come with not knowing what the symptomology might be or how it is spread amongst people, that has
ex-
created a stigma around, or has created a stigma for individuals who have experienced or who have suffered from COVID-19,
mm,
therefore
mm.
leaving them isolated, leaving them feeling feelings of guilt or shame. And that
Yes.
really is a difficult experience to go through. It's
Mm,
a psychologically isolating experience to go through, and very
yes.
overwhelming as well. And I think it's also important that we look at this in terms or in relation to mental health, because oftentimes people don't really know what, like you were saying, what the
Mm,
symptomology might be. They don't
yes.
really know how to cope with what they are
Mm,
experiencing, and thus feel a sense of stigma because they aren't able to say to maybe a neighbor, this is what I'm experiencing, or they
mm,
aren't
mm,
able to put into words for, the nurse or the doctor that is treating them, this is what I'm
mm,
experiencing, and they just keep it to
mm.
themselves.
Yes, that is true. Mm,
Mm.
mm. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's further explore stigma as it relates to your experiences when it comes to either Black or disadvantaged communities.
Mm, mm. I think when we talk about mental health, and especially in the Black communities, most of the people, we associate mental health with witchcraft. So that is why most of the people, you find that we avoid talking about mental health, especially in the Black community, because the moment you mention mental health, people think you're bewitched. It doesn't exist. That is why, and in most cases, what I've seen is that's why you find people suffering from mental health um, diseases or disorders or illnesses. They they don't even take that treatment because they don't believe in it, because they think, no, I'll have to go seek other um, issues or other ways of dealing with this, rather than the medical way, because they don't believe in mental health, because it is associated with witchcraft. So that is the problem. That is the issue that we're facing, especially in the Black communities with regards to mental health.
I really agree with what you're saying. And I think what's also very important to take away from what you're saying is that the stigma around, or the conception that mental health is related either to witchcraft or to demonic possession, as some people would say, if we're relating it to a more spiritual or a religious type of background, then what it really does, or the result of that, then comes in with access to, professional services or to mental health care services. It really impacts how individuals are able to access those services. You find that people are not as willing to consult with a psychologist or an occupational therapist or a psychiatrist, and would rather consult with, a sangoma, which is also okay, because I mean, if we are looking at South Africa and our multicultural practices, it is essential that we look into the different forms or the alternative forms of healing that are out there for our people. But it also is important to consider the medical as well as the psychological elements when it comes to mental health care, which a lot of people tend to shy away from or are afraid of when they're looking at the communities that they may be coming from. And then I think another issue is, unfortunately, the limited access that people in disadvantaged communities have to mental health care services. So the reality for some communities is, even though they would want to access these services, they have such limited services provided to them. So they'll have like maybe one psychologist for an entire clinic, or they'll have one psychiatrist coming in once a week for an entire clinic. Sometimes they have medication that is very necessary for maintaining their coping, and they don't have access to that. So having clinics running out of medications like lithium for, bipolar, individuals who are suffering from bipolar mood disorder, that is another element that comes with, the stigma or the fear, and obviously impacts how mental health care services are then accessed.
And I think, just to add to that, the lack of resources, especially in the disadvantaged communities, that is the main problem. And then also you find that even the healthcare workers who are there in the communities, they're also overburdened because they don't have the resources themselves. That you find that sometimes even it's just one psychology, like you said, a psychologist, but you find that some clinics you only have a social worker who's supposed to now deal with psychological issues, so that is also a problem, because you find that, okay, there are people who are willing to get the help that they need, but also the resources. And then another thing, when you look at when looking at getting a psychologist, most people all think that they're expensive. A consultation with a psychologist is expensive. And when you look on the other hand, they're like, okay, fine, but there are no resources, but psychology is expensive. And then they get to a point where they're like, okay, fine, let me just shy away, let me just keep quiet about this because I cannot afford it. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get people to actually access adequate information or treatment in terms of mental health.
And it's just to echo on what you're saying, I think a very real reality in South Africa is, when we are referring to access to mental health, is the discrepancy that we are experiencing when it comes to healthcare services in South Africa. All right, now that we've really explored access to or limited access to resources and the access to resources and sort of started to unpack stigma in itself, let's look a little bit deeper into it and more personally into it in terms of stigma across generations. Do you think that there is or do you think the stigma around mental health exists across generations?
I think it does. I think it does. When you look at our parents and our grandmothers, and I mean, what their understanding of mental health is completely different from what we understand this in this generation. That okay, fine, we have a better understanding, or we have information with regards to what is mental health. It's not just associated to witchcraft like our parents would associate it with, but also the information, we have more information and stuff. So, and also if you look at how our mothers and grandparents lived and how we live now is completely different. Right now, when we started this, as I said that my understanding of mental health is the ability to cope with your everyday life, everyday stresses. Back then, if we go back, you'll recall that mothers were not expected to work. They were expected to just be home and raise the children, whereas the husband would be, be the one working. So obviously, they didn't expect you to be stressed about you just raising children. What is wrong with you? So, but now, if you look in our generation, you're a mother, you're a working woman, you're into business, you're a career woman. So also the stresses of life are also different. That is why we understand more about mental health, because we're going through it. Whereas back then it would be like, as a woman, especially, I think also based on just talking about women, is you have to be strong. You're a mother. You have to be strong. You can't break down. And also because mental health is also associated with weakness. The moment that you approach someone and be like, okay, fine, I'm going through this and this, other people, maybe our older mothers and grandmothers, be like, hi, but you're weak. A woman is supposed to be strong. You're supposed to bring everything together. Whereas our understanding is that, okay, fine, you're going through this and that. Also because of how life is now compared to how life was back then. Because back then they'll be like, no, you're a woman, you're a mother, you have to raise your children. I mean, they didn't even believe in having someone to help you raise your children. Now, we need that because of what we are faced with. You're supposed to work and take care of business, take care of your children, so that also the stigma around the generations, that's where it comes from. So now it's completely different from how life used to be back then. So I think our elders, they don't understand, because they're like, hey, our life is too fast, but also it comes with its stresses. Whereas back then, that's why they associated mental health with witchcraft and weakness as a woman, or as a person. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I really like what you're saying there, Sarah, in terms of, the stresses that our mothers or our parents used to have versus the stresses that we have. And I think what that is also highlighting is the compounded effect that the stigma would then also have in terms of our parents, while they had less awareness of these stresses and while we have more awareness of them, that awareness also creates a sense of stigma in that you sort of compare yourself. So if we're looking at, because we're both mothers, if we're looking at how, after pregnancy and after delivering your baby, you have this period, and say, for example, one of us were to experience postnatal depression, we would have information about that, and we would sort of understand that experience, we'd understand it theoretically, even though
Yeah.
the practical experience of it would also be very difficult, right?
Mm,
Our
mm,
our parents or our grandparents weren't necessarily exposed to that awareness. So
mm,
when you're working with that information, and possibly even still, living with your parents or having your mother assist you
mm,
in that period, then the stigma is, okay, what if she thinks I'm lazy because I'm feeling this
mm.
way? Won't understand
Exactly.
this experience. Even though you understand this experience, you still have
Mm,
this sense of stigma, or you place a sense of stigma on yourself because
mm,
of this awareness that they won't understand the situation.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and I think then it brings me to questioning, like, what sort of conversations are we having with people across various generations in our own lives when it comes to
mm,
mental health?
mm.
What sort of conversations do you have with people in your life, in various in various generations about mental health?
Mm. That's very interesting because it's very difficult to discuss mental health issues with older people. Because, for example, if I were to go to my mother and be like, I'm depressed, or I go there, I break down, I start crying, I think with me it would be the fear of looking weak, or
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, fine, like they'll be like, no, but you're a mother now, you're not supposed to break down, you can't put yourself together. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I'll be more comfortable discussing that with you, and then not feel judged, because you understand, you have the information that what is depression, what is it that I'm struggling with, or that, okay, I'm not coping with being a mother, being a wife, being a business person, being a career woman, and then you can help me, come with a plan to say, okay, fine, let's work around this. But in terms of our older people, it's very difficult. It's very, very
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Yeah, because also you have to, like, okay, think they don't understand. I mean, the moment you go to your mom and tell her that I think I have bipolar. I'm just giving an example. They'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
"You're crazy. What is that?" So the
Mm-hmm.
lack of information makes it difficult for us to approach our elder people with regards to mental health, whereas it's easier to have this kind of excuse me, this kind of conversations with someone our age.
Mm, mm, mm.
Mm,
Yes, I fully agree with that, because I think for me personally, um, experiencing, and I think this is very common in our field as well as healthcare
mm,
practitioners, we often experience things like burnout and stress,
yeah.
and the fatigue that comes with that. So
Mm,
trying to even unpack that with,
mm, mm,
our parents or someone older can be quite daunting, right?
yeah.
But I think what I've found that made it quite easier, or that made it easier for me to have that conversation with,
Mm,
elders in my life, was to sort of model this behavior, or really allow them to see the effects of burnout and stress in my life.
mm,
So
mm,
being comfortable with the breakdown, being
yes.
comfortable with,
Mm,
the
mm,
sense of fatigue and feeling anxiety and being overwhelmed because
mm,
of,
mm,
the
mm,
stresses that come with either the career, or juggling career and lifestyle. So
mm,
that's sort of helped to have a conversation.
mm,
So it sort of has placed in their lives, like, okay, so this experience isn't uncommon to you. You just
yeah.
weren't aware of what it is. And there is
Yeah.
actually something that you can put a name to.
Mm,
Now.
mm,
So if there's a name to it, we can sort of start to discuss it and unpack it. And then I found that they would actually ask questions and be like,
yeah.
okay, so what does this mean? And how can I then go about,
Helping
getting
you.
services or getting the right help with this? Like,
Mm,
what do I
mm,
need to do? In the exact same way that they would go to their doctor when they
mm,
have like headaches or a runny stomach or whatever,
Mm.
they're able to ask you those questions
Yeah.
when it comes to their mental health as well. So if they are experiencing a little bit of anxiety or even quite an extensive amount of anxiety, then they can approach you and be like, what is this? How can I work with this? Where do I need to go to work with this? And as much as it's almost been like a catch-22, in that you feel sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't, but it's really paved a sort of open communication in terms of having these difficult discussions when it comes to mental health. Hearing them sort of discuss mental health and have this, one-sided perspective and be like, actually, no, that isn't what it is. And giving them, more information about what this is, and having, even church elders or communities asking practitioners to come in and discuss some of these topics with their elderly community members or churchgoers is really a good step, is a positive step in creating awareness as well. So I found it very enlightening to sort of be the reference point for the people in my life to sort of see. But obviously I can't be the reference point for everything, but helping them understand even like the smaller, or can I even say smaller, but the more mundane sort of difficulties and adjustments that you experience in life and how they relate to mental health has been quite liberating to go through with them as well.
And I think what I'm picking up from what you're saying, Paul, is that it has to start with you first. For you to be able to say, okay, fine, I'm going to seek help, and also to go against the stigma. It has to start with you, because yes, the elders don't understand everything, but if you're like, okay, this is first, you have to accept that this is what I'm going through, and be comfortable, like you said, be comfortable with being vulnerable, with being feeling weak, and accepting that, yes, I am weak and it's okay, and I need help. So I think it has to start with you to be able to go against the stigma and win against that. It has to be with you first, and then also with you, then you also gather information for also people around you to say, you know what, I'm going through this, and this is the information about what I'm going through. If it's depression, this is the information about depression, and these are the symptoms, and this is what I'm experiencing, and this is how you can help me. So I think the important thing, which is I think the difficult part, dealing it with yourself first before going out there. So I think that's very important.
And I think it's also something that we need to take on ourselves as practitioners to be able to provide or be able to encourage our government and our nation to have equal resources, or equal access to resources for everyone across the nation, so that we aren't experiencing these discrepancies. And that's another important element of this symposium, and what we're trying to explore when it comes to mental health, the equal access of resources to everyone in the nation. So I really just want to thank you for everything that you've contributed to this discussion. It has been a very insightful and enlightening conversation that we've had. Thank you for the awareness that you are providing us with, and just the conversation that we've had. It's been a lovely discussion that we've had, and I think a lot of people will benefit from this. A lot of people will be able to take some things away from this as well. So thank you very much for your engagement.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for engaging in this first segment of our symposium and within the series of the symposium. We look forward to your engagements, and we look forward to any of the contributions that you would like to make towards the topics that we are covering. Enjoy the rest of the segments and take care of yourselves.
You can't tell how someone feels just by looking at them or what they share online. To the outside world, our lives may look perfect, even if in reality they aren't. I'm always worrying about doing well at school, and with the end of year test coming up, I'm not sure how much longer I can cope. My thoughts swarm around my head, sometimes keeping me up all night. Some days it's just all too much, and I feel like I'm lost in space. When I did badly on one of my tests, I just about kept it together until I got home. Then I broke down crying in front of my mum. She listened for a bit, and then she told me that, just like physical health, we all have mental health. It's our feelings, our thinking, our emotions, and our moods. She then said that feeling down, angry, and stressed is a normal part of life, just like it's normal to feel happy, confident, and carefree sometimes. We all have positive and negative emotions that come and go based on what's happening around us. These are everyday feelings. Good mental health means experiencing negative emotions. It's not always about being happy. Mum can relate to the feelings of stress. So when Mum suggested I take a break from everything and do something I enjoy, I actually took her advice. So I made myself a hot chocolate, snuggled up in a duvet and watched a film. And you know what? Afterwards I felt so much better. Mum should take her own advice.
Most of us only ever share the good things. We don't like to share how we really feel. Every morning when I wake up, negative thoughts stream through my head. Getting out of bed and pretending I'm okay takes all the energy I have. As the day goes on, the negative thoughts turn from a stream into a river. The water rushes through my head so loudly it's hard to concentrate in lessons. And some days it's so bad it feels like a waterfall that's trying to pull me over the edge. Everything is so overwhelming. I didn't think my friends would understand if I told them how down I was feeling. But when Sasha opened up to me about how stressed she was feeling, I told her. I wasn't sure how to bring up how I'd been feeling, so I started by saying that I didn't feel like myself. Just her listening made me feel like she understood. She told me some things that had helped her, so I tried them too, but it didn't make much of a difference. Even when I tried to be around my friends, I felt alone. The things I used to enjoy weren't fun anymore.
I was really worried about Andre and not sure what to do. He was quiet and wasn't hanging out with us like he used to. So I asked our head of year for some advice. He suggested I get Andre to speak to him since his negative feelings weren't going away.
I didn't want to speak to our head of year, but I also didn't want to keep feeling so down, so I went. He said that sometimes we have overwhelming feelings that can be more intense than our everyday feelings. These feelings hang around for a long time and change the way we feel, think, and behave. They can stop us doing what we want to in life. That's what I was going through. He also said that if we're physically unwell, we let people know, we ask for help. It should be no different with mental health. Sometimes our overwhelming feelings are brought on because of things in our life. Sometimes they happen for no reason at all. After hearing this, I felt much less alone and it felt good to talk. Scientists have found exercise can help when you're feeling low, so our head of year encouraged me to sign up to the school football club, which Sasha was already in. I still have days when the river is there, but now I'm beginning to understand my mental health. I'm learning how to cope. Our head of year reminded me that my friends, family, teachers, and lots of others at school are there to help just as much as he is. I had no idea the people around me could be so understanding. And while it's not always easy to talk about my mental health, the person I'm talking to might be able to help. If you don't feel like talking, that's fine. You could try writing, sports, reading, art, music, playing with your pet, whatever makes you feel better.
If you're the person someone talks to when they're struggling, just listen with no pressure or judgments. You don't have to have the answer. If you feel unsure about anything, you can speak to a trusted adult. Talking about mental health doesn't have to be difficult. After all, it's something we all have.
In this segment, I would like to introduce to you Jackie and the teacher. As we know, right at the beginning, teachers were, I want to use this word forced, but actually maybe not really forced. It was in the line of duty. After the essential workers, teachers were then asked to go back to the classroom so that we can finish this academic year. So Jackie is discussing with the teacher in terms of what was the impact of this, looking at the theme around anxiety and how to manage that. So I hope you can find this helpful, or a fellow teacher or somebody that you know can find it helpful as we introduce Jackie and the teacher.
Hello. Okay. I am Karabo Rankapule.
Yeah.
And I am a teacher
Yeah.
at Old School in Pretoria.
How do things change?
I'd say in terms of what is it that we had to do. So we then had to be doing signing in with the kids. So in the morning we signed them in, the usual taking the temperature and making note of the usual COVID screening that we would get at shops or hospitals or clinics and so on. We had to just, that's the new thing that we have now. That will obviously mean we have to be present for when the kids come through into the schoolyard so that they can be scanned. Another thing that happened, obviously, the sanitizing in the classroom. So beginning of the period, then sanitize, so they line up and then sanitize, and then they come into the classroom, and also the disinfecting of the desks and the chairs and so on. But in terms of teaching, we obviously then had to just be cutting out a few things within the curriculum so that we can be able to cover the content that would be good and content that is relevant to them.
And are you working with a full classroom of children, or is there?
No, we've split them into somewhat half. So there's A days and there's B days. So there's learners who come in on A days. So pretty much every day is half of the school. So the other half comes on a different day and the other half on a different day.
And do you feel that you've been given enough emotional support to handle the new system of teaching?
I believe that somewhat there is. So like a certain extent, and obviously your colleagues and those around you that are also helping out there and there. There's just points where obviously now it's a bit of more of the workload in terms of all the other things by teaching, but we make it work.
And how are your feelings in terms of the new system of teaching?
It gets exhausting sometimes.
You're finding it's difficult?
Yeah, there's moments where you're like, I just need to sleep. But yeah, we get, so there's that, yeah, some exhaustion there and there, but also just a bit of, well, because you teach one thing today and the next day, you at least also just have that whole great balance of knowing that now you know your work, and repetition also helps with remembering your content very well. So there's like the good and the bad.
And tell me, how are the children feeling?
Shame, the coming back at first was, you could shame, you could just see the anxiety in their faces, and like, you know, when
and how are you handling that, Karabo?
There and then, I mean, because luckily we have also counselors and psychologists here at school. So that too is also helping tremendously. Even us as teachers, if you just see that, because you're able to see your learners, you know them, and you're able to relate to them, not just on a learner level, but also on a emotional level and so on. So you can spot here and there what's going on, and you just be able to just talk to them. That's as far as the emotional.
And the counselors and psychologists that you have at the school, do they see the children on an individual basis, or do they see classrooms as a group?
No, individual.
Individual. Okay, so if a child needs help, can they then ask for an interview with the counselors? Okay. And so there's so much extra pressure on you in terms of what you have to deal with. How anxious are you getting every day?
Yeah, sure. Well, honestly, like when I got back, I was, you know, not when I got back, but in the process of coming back, I was a bit anxious in terms of that, because I'm like, how do I then do this? Because I also enjoy just doing like extra work for them and then handing them out like notes and so on. But now you can't do that anymore. And then contact as well, because usually if a learner has like a question, they're busy with an assessment and or homework or classwork and so on, and you just have to like walk next to the kid and try to explain the sum right there. Sometimes, I mean, you even use their utensils and be like, no, this is how you were supposed to draw it, or this is how you're supposed to do it. So now it's like you get there and even going there, you're like, okay, and then you put on your mask and then you get to the learner and then you try to explain there. And then before you even think, you know how it's like just so involuntary, you're like, let me just help you. And then you remember, you're like, oh, can't take your pen either. Get your pen and then come back and then try to do all of that. So a lot, the anxiety was there. It's still there, but I think it's lesser now. Yeah.
You're getting used to it.
I think it's that, yeah. And also just getting used to the routine.
Yeah. Yeah. Karabo, do you have a family?
I do.
Are you living in your family?
Yeah.
So you have to watch for cross-infection for your own family as well.
Definitely, yes. Because again, like I'm saying, I was on leave. I was actually on maternity leave. So coming back to work, and you're like, oh, do I? So every time I get home, it's that whole thing of take off the clothes, put them in the washing machine, go bath, and only then can I hold my baby. So it's yeah.
So it's a whole performance that you have to go through before you can even greet the family.
Exactly.
And on top of everything else, you were talking about your own anxiety just now. What have you been doing to get on top of it? Because clearly you've gotten used to this new way of coping. What have you done to lessen the anxiety?
Sure. I don't know. I think it's, like I'm saying, the getting used to and just being aware of the systems put in place. Because I think it's also that whole thing of I'm going into this environment. Am I ready for it? What's actually happening that would be of precautionary measures? So you ask yourself so many questions before you step into it. And then once you're there, you're like, okay, I know as a teacher, I'm also responsible for sanitizing the kids' hands. I'm responsible for infecting the chairs and so on. And because we're in the classroom as well, I'm responsible for disinfecting my desk and so on once someone has left. So it's, I think, just getting used to what has to happen to be on the safe side, then that just helps in terms of that.
So stick to the things that you know are safe, and then your anxiety levels don't get so high.
Yeah.
The resistance must go, the resistance to the change.
Yes, exactly that. Because the minute you just remain all resistance to the change, then it doesn't go that well.
Yeah. Have you been doing any deep breathing or relaxing or meditating or visualizing?
I think more of just the meditating and the relaxing would just be getting into a good warm bubble bath. Just having the lights off, candles on, and just relax and just catch yourself from the day and just step into I think the usual that I would also just be doing as like on a normal basis, just leave work at work, be home. But obviously as a teacher, there's some parts that there's some work parts that come with you at home, but
just comes in the door with you.
Just being able to separate yourself from all of that and just being at ease and at peace with the fact that you've got people around you who love you, who care about you, just that positivity, the affirmation. I think that's what's been my go-to.
Well, it sounds like you're doing quite well, Rayas. Karabo, thank you so much. I do appreciate this. Thank you for making yourself available for this interview. I am eternally grateful. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So as we've seen from Karabo, and I know from a great number of teachers throughout the country, there's great changes in the education department and in delivery of education. And one of the things that it's essential to do is to train our students how to cope with the stress, how to cope with the anxiety. And here we've got it. Slow, deep breathing is the handbrake for anxiety. The handbrake that actually stops the part of the brain that's pushing oxygen and chemicals and hormones into your body so that you can have a reaction, we call it the fight or flight response. So with that, slow, deep breathing is the handbrake for this anxiety. And consequently as well, to get rid of all of that excess chemical reaction, physical activity is the natural end to this fight or flight response. There are several steps to coping with your stress or anxiety. It's the deep, slow breathing, it's relaxing, it's visualizing your special place and restoring the calm, healing. And then the last step is changing the thought. Deep, slow breathing has to be practiced. It is terribly important. If you don't practice, it's not there for you when you need it. It's like learning how to type. When you first start, it's A and then B, looking for the letters on the keypad. But with practice, within a very short while, you're not even looking at the keys. You're just typing. This is the same sort of skill. With deep, slow breathing, you have to breathe in through your nose for the count of 4. Hold your breath for the count of 4 and breathe out through your mouth with force so that every last bit of air comes out of your body for the count of 4. I'm going to demonstrate. In, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4, and every last bit of air must come out of your body. And basically, to control the chemical response, to manage your anxiety, you need to do 3 to 4 deep breaths, very deep breaths, to get the job done. That was the first step. Now for the second step, we've got the relaxing, where you picture all of the muscles in your body as if you're looking at yourself like one of those anatomical drawings that's on the back of your GP's office. It's got a picture of the body with no skin on it, just all the muscles are visible. I want you to picture all of the muscles in your legs and in your feet, and then in your tummy and your chest and your arms and hands, and then your neck and shoulders, and then your head, tighter and tighter. Don't forget your jaw, don't forget your tongue, which is an incredibly busy muscle in the body. Tighten all of these muscles bit by bit or all together, and then just relax. Let them go. Let yourself become limp and heavy and floppy like a rag doll. Just allow yourself then to relax deeper and deeper. And while you're relaxing, I want you to start to picture a place in your mind's eye where you feel totally safe and secure, where there's nothing that could harm you or frighten you. And just allow yourself to enjoy being there. Enjoy the smells of that place and the sounds and the warmth. Allow yourself to relax deeper and deeper. And when you're in your special place, just allow yourself to feel relaxed and refreshed, to feel safe and secure. And after spending time in your special place, just enjoy the feeling of calmness. Let it fill you. And then we've got the last step, which is changing the thought. And now you have to understand that thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to behavior. Our behavior is a result of our feelings, and our feelings are a result of our thoughts. So if we find that we're beginning to feel agitated or withdrawn, if we're not sleeping well, not eating well, if you can't remember things, if your muscles are tense and you're feeling keyed up and on edge, then what you have to do at that point is follow these steps and then see what it is that's making you feel this way, because it's a thought. It's a thought, and you have to change that thought. So if you're feeling anxious and you're acting keyed up and on edge, what you have to do is, in fact, check what you're thinking. What is the thought behind this feeling? And as soon as you get to it, all you have to do is change it. Change it so that you don't feel helpless and hopeless, so that you don't feel victim. Make yourself change your mode from victim mode into survival mode. You can be a survivor. You don't have to be the victim. But practice, 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 taking your deep breath, relaxing, going to your special place, restoring the calm. And when you're calm, all you have to do is change the thought that got you into this situation in the first place. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Karabo, for being with us. Bye, everybody.
I would like to introduce to you in this segment Maxine, and a carer or somebody who's supporting a loved one who has had traumatic experience. So in this interview, it's a real case study of how do we then be resourced or nourished as people who take care of individuals or loved ones who have gone through a traumatic experience.
Okay, so I'm just going to call you Jane Doe, if that helps. So you are someone who has supported someone who's experienced a trauma, and I suppose the biggest question is, how was that for you? If you had to describe it in one sentence or in a short space, how would you describe what it's like for you as a human being to support someone else who's been through a trauma?
Personally, I had to put myself aside and actually be there for someone else in their depth of their emotional need. So I had to learn how it is for you to literally not care about how this is affecting you at that moment, but consider how this must be affecting the actual person and just empathize with the situation and try and carry the burden as much as you can with them.
Okay. So when you say put yourself aside and learning empathy, how did you do that?
It was a challenging phase because I was myself still a teenager, so it had to I had to become wiser than I could have fathomed I would at the point. But her having to tell me about the situation and me experiencing it with her was a daily reminder of how can I help, what can I do. And in that process of me asking these questions, I'd come up with like slight solutions because the situation was not mine to solve, but slight solutions to kind of make it more bearable for her.
Hmm. Hmm. And like I say, if you were a teenager, you're learning something, or you're having to face something that I suppose the stereotypical teenager shouldn't have to face. Um, so when you say in that moment you had to have the courage and have the empathy to sort of focus on her, what did you do after the moment was over? You know, sort of say you calmed her down or him, and then they walk away and you are left. You know, the word you used was carry the burden.
Well,
What was it like after that?
mm, it I feel like kind of part of the trauma I had to live with and deal with myself, and I had to like get in my own space and try and figure out how I'm feeling about this and how it has
Mm.
affected me, and deal with that so that I don't carry it onto my future relationships, because it had challenged me to the point where I felt like emotionally I was not ready, but herself, she was not ready either. So I couldn't be a coward and let her to herself because she was my best friend. So I tried my best that when I
Mm.
got to my own space and I was overwhelmed, I deal with it there so that she is never like exposed to my reaction to it, and she'd only be exposed to the supportive side of me and me reassuring her that it's going to be okay and she can do it, because I actually wanted to believe at that point that like this can be handled and this can be dealt with and we can both grow into stronger beings and handle this in future more effectively
Sure.
even.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were in two separate roles. You know, the one role is being supportive, and you wanted her to see that side, the empathy, the courage,
Yeah.
the support. But then you step into a different role where you process what's just happened. You know, what we consider like vicarious trauma, or, you know, having the secondhand trauma. So did you find that you also needed support? That you needed your
I
own
did.
soundboard?
I did, and in the position, um, I already had judged her. The rest of my friend group judged her, so we were afraid of more external judgment. So I was afraid of approaching anyone and consulting about this. But I found myself in a position where I was having a hard time dealing with everything else in life and having to pick up her calls or go for checkups with her, because I now feel like it's baggage on me, and my life was like simple before then. So it was like something like a phase that I didn't see coming. So I had to ask my mom, what do I do? I really want to support my friend, but I feel myself emotionally burnt out at this point because
Mm.
I feel like I've reached my maximum of support. I've done my part, and my mom like reassured me that you are never done as a friend, as a supporter. This person is counting on you. So I had to dig inside of myself and find the courage and the strength to continue, because I've already been there for her, and I can't be another person letting her down now. So that was very challenging.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of responsibility to say you can't let her down, that this will be with you both forever. You know, yeah, do you think that's at all fair or right to say, that this is not just a burden that'll happen to her, it'll be a burden, inverted commas, a burden for the both of you forever going forward? Is that something, looking back on it, that was, fair and just, or was there a point in which you do say enough is enough?
Personally, at that point, the reason why I feel like I couldn't do it, because I felt like it was unfair towards me. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't ask for this. Yet I'm in this position where everyone else is going to see me as the bad person, as her best friend, walking out on her when she most needed me. But I felt like I have done all I could. I don't know what else to do. It's becoming deeper, and I'm feeling like I'm just entering a dark tunnel with her, that I don't know what lies ahead for us. And I wanted to bail out. I was done. I was ready to goodbye the situation.
So I think that's an important thing you've made that distinction with, to say, like, if you support too much, if you get too involved, you go in the dark tunnel with them. But it's almost like someone's stuck in a dark well, whether they got themselves in there or not. Those are sometimes questions we've got to grapple with separately or at a different time. But we can't jump in the well with them. And it sounds like at some point you jumped in the well and you had to ask your mom to give you a rope. And once you'd realize that actually, there are other ways to support. I can throw the rope. I can keep being there for her. This is quite an interesting, I suppose, narrative or to say you can't abandon her now as well. When it's, it's not as simple as that. Hey, it's not, if you had a bad day as well and you couldn't pick up the phone, you were studying for a test, are you abandoning her? Or is that just life? That at some point, not everyone is going to be there for everything. And there's a big difference between helping and empowering and just being real. Was there ever a time in which you had to say, no, I can't be there for you today? It's not about forever, it's just for today. I have my own stuff going on. Did you ever find yourself in that position, that place?
Life happened to me. I had life defining moments. I had like phases as well that I couldn't fully commit to, because I have someone here that needs me to help them live this phase of their life, because she doesn't know how to do that, as well as the life phases that comes with being a teenager that we both were going through at that point. So I felt like, you know what, we both have this test, but she has the situation as well. So I need to help her study now. Not just that, I need to help her when she's feeling low, when she wants to give up on school, or like broader things. I feel like at some point I had to be her emotional navigation for her to mentally be able to get through it.
Yeah. And, times at which, you needed to say no. Was there ever a point where, you sort of grapple with yourself to be like, but I need time for myself too, and I need to be there for me? Did you ever get angry at yourself for, I suppose, choosing her first? Because she's had this trauma, because, she's going through a rough time. It feels sometimes a bit neglectful towards yourself to say, but so am I. Might not be the same, but I'm at it too. Was that experience something you had?
Very much so. As I said in the beginning, we were actually a group of girlfriends, right? So they felt like they're not willing to do it, and I was the one left with her. So at some point I felt like, why didn't I just, choose the easy way out as everyone else did? Because I don't know what I'm doing at all, and I'm a person, personally, I love my space and I love my me time, and I felt like that was being completely bombarded by the situation, and I all of a sudden did not know how to react in my own body. My identity was quite challenged by the situation because I was not prepared developmentally. I was not prepared for this. At some point, I'd become very resentful towards her because the anger would resurface when something happens to me. I'd be feeling like I can't do this because you had put me in a situation to do your things with you. So it would resurface over and over again. And sometimes I did react because I was a bit young and I didn't know better. But I would always apologize, and I'd always find a way to, work it out with her, because I'd see that she doesn't have anyone else, and don't know what she'd do if she had to lose me. So I was her only option, and that kept me imprisoned to the whole situation. And yeah, I made it through with her.
Yeah.
In a
So
very
how
weird
did you
way.
guys, resolve it? I wonder about, and did you say you did speak to her sometimes about how you were feeling, to say you feel a bit of resentment or angry, and so how did you, as the supporter, and her as and I really dislike this word, but there isn't another word, the victim of trauma, how did you guys resolve? I mean, are you still friends? What ended up happening in the aftermath?
We found a way to strengthen our friendship throughout this, and I laid the grounds for her. I understand she needs me and everything, but she needs to understand that I have ABCs in my life as well, and I have other people. I have my family, for instance. I have other friends. I don't think I mentioned the other friends because she was kind of sensitive to doll friend things since everyone had abandoned her. So she constantly needed me to choose her over everything in my life, and I had to make her understand that I can't always be here. I can be here, but not all the time. So she was able to understand that at a later stage. Well, not same time, but she was able to understand it at a later stage, and she actually saw what I did for her.
It's interesting. It happens when the consequence starts to override, and you start to have major consequences of being the supporter. You're one of the few people, not few people, there's a lot, but that have learned from being a supporter. You saw the benefits, you learned, empathy, compassion, courage, separating yourself from in the two roles of being supporter and friend, but then also being like human being and then supporter, being there for her like a pillar of strength, but at the same time then saying, okay, now you've got the house on your own. You've got to actually stand on your own 2 feet because I also have a life. And then maintaining that relationship. So talking a bit about how it feels and what are the experiences and tips for those who are supporting other people who've been through traumatic events. So trauma is pretty much anything that disrupts your social, occupational, personal functioning, something that sort of knocks you off balance. So being someone who has another person disclose that to you can be quite difficult. Okay. As some of you may experience, you sort of can feel a bit overwhelmed, but at the same time not feeling like you're allowed to be overwhelmed. That you have to be the strong one, the courageous one, the one that gives guidance and strength and sort of holds them. So in psychology, we have a term called holding or containing, where we sort of take an overwhelming situation. Sorry about the background. We take an overwhelming situation and we keep it intact. So
if you've been through a difficult experience, you might recognize this feeling of, I don't want to talk about it because then I might just unravel and lose control completely. So when you're someone who's supporting someone who's in that space, what you end up doing is you're holding them. You're supporting them. You're being the courageous and strong one. And that can be quite difficult in itself. So that's, first difficult thing. Secondly, trauma, repeats itself. It'll come back, or not the trauma repeats itself, but it'll play in someone's mind for a long time. It's got a long aftermath. And that can be from a hijacking to an attempted robbery. It can also, even though it's not a robbery, or someone didn't break in, an attempted robbery, an attempted assault, sexual, non-sexual, even a trauma like feeling abandoned by your parent or your partner, going through a breakup, so anything like that. For someone who is on the supporting side, what it can do is it can change your beliefs. So one, it overwhelms you. Two, you might change how you feel about the world, feel about perpetrators, whether they're male, parents, families, friends. It might change how you feel about the person telling you, so the person who's experienced the trauma. You might be mad at them, feeling like, why did you let this happen? This stuff doesn't happen to us, or it's not what we do. So there can be a lot of resentment, anger, changing in how we feel about people, people close to us, and in general. Can change the way that you think about the world. There's no hope, people are evil, this country is violent, it's unsafe outside, I'm out of control of a situation. So, I suppose the right word would be vicarious trauma. Is you're experiencing the trauma, although you didn't go through it, you're experiencing its aftermath, its consequences. So that's a second, really big thing that happens to someone who is supporting someone else who's been through the trauma. And for less of a better word, you need to find your own support system. So once you've held that person or you've been supportive, and ideally anything that relates to empathic listening. So, I'm here for you. It sounds like this was really difficult. Do you want to tell me anything more? If the trauma has recently happened, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of, are you safe right now? Are you in any immediate danger? Do you need to go to the hospital? Do you need to go to the police station? So if it's an immediate thing, there's a lot of practical things to do. If it's sort of them disclosing a bit later, it's about being an empathic listener, being compassionate, creating that space for them to express themselves. And that means for you holding on to a sense of strength. So I always speak about your sense of self. And I always hold my chest because the majority of people feel it in their chest. And it's what we call grounding. So it's taking something really strong about yourself. Like, I know that I'm an incredibly strong person. So I imagine this bright light inside of me that's just holding me. Now how the sun is very strong, it's like, oh, that is what holds me. Sometimes you might need something physical. So you don't show that person that you're agitated. You might fiddle with something to just contain yourself so that you can be a support system for them. But you need to also reach out. Once that person has now, not so much offloaded, I'm not a fan of the word offloaded, but after they've told you, it is like an offload. They feel a sense of relief. They're not the only one that knows. They're not the only one that has experienced this. So then they walk away and you're sitting there going, this happened to someone I love, someone I care about. And that's when all the other consequences happen. You start feeling overwhelmed. So being able to then find a support system yourself in the first couple of months after you've been supportive to that person, you need your third party. So there's the person who experienced it, there's you, and then there's the person that supports you. So finding that person, whether it's a parent, another friend, to say, I was there for so-and-so, and it really shook me. I can't believe that those types of things happen in the world. And it was so hard. So having a space where you can then reflect and you can talk about what it did to you. Then, what ends up happening is sometimes then you become that person's dependent. You might be the only one they know. or only one that knows the situation. So they'll always need you. You always need to be there for them. And an important thing here is boundaries. To say, you're still a human being. You still have your own feelings and your own stuff to do. So you'll have to be able to, at some point, and that's why I say after a couple of months, need to put a boundary down to say, okay, I was there for you, and it was really important to be there for you, be your strength, be your pillar. And for anything you need, for the first few months, I was there for you. But my life is starting to take a toll. And hopefully it doesn't get that far. You get to a point where you're able to say, cool, I can be there for you. But on Sundays, it's really a time for me and my family. Or I have a really big test coming up, so I really need to make sure that I can study as well. You can come sit with me, we can go for breakfast tomorrow, but would it be okay if I did my studies? So I'm giving you like practical examples of putting a boundary to say, I'm here for you, but I need to look after myself too, because you're still a human being. And it is difficult to support someone who's been through a trauma. There's a lot of responsibility and it feels a bit burdensome. And like I say, you have an impact. How you feel about the world, how you feel about the perpetrator, even how you feel about, the victim. I don't know why I really dislike that word. The person who's experienced a trauma. I'd rather explain it. So putting up boundaries or putting, what I would say, empowerment processes between you and this person. So in the beginning, you're there for them all the time. You might call them, message them. You might even stay with them for a few while to say, or they come stay with you. But at some point, they've got to grow again. They've got to get strong again. So you also, as part of your supportive spaces, as part of your supportive role, is to allow them to grow as well. To say, like, I don't mind you staying over, but would it be okay if it's just one night this time? Next time, I can come to you, but I don't mind, I don't want to sleep, I've got pets, I've got stuff going on. And always disclosing that it's not about them, it's about you. It's not that I don't love you or that I don't care about you or that I'm dismissing what's happening or what has happened and all the consequences thereof. But I can't fully support you if I don't have my own life. I don't also take care of what's important and what's going on in my life. So acknowledging that you become a supportive person, to being ready for the consequences for you, the vicarious trauma you are going through, and having a space where you can then express that. And 3, being able to put up boundaries as a supportive person, the supporter, to say I can support you and I'll be there for you in the beginning, like intensely, but then wean away your support so that they can grow and you can take care of your own life. Then the last thing is, if it's too much for you, refer. Okay, if it's actually any trauma, refer. And refer is, what I mean by that is, and you do it in a very empathic way, because it nowadays can get taken quite badly, but to say, I can see you're struggling a lot and I want to be your friend. And I feel as though what you're going through, what you've been through, requires a professional. Either a psychologist, a lay counselor, a pastor, whoever makes you feel comfortable. But I would prefer to just be your friend in this situation. The reason why I say refer to the fact that you want to be just a friend and that they need a professional is, if nowadays, if someone says, you should go to therapy for that, it gives an impression that you're too much for me, that your problem is too big for me to deal with. And that unfortunately is a narrative or story that's happening quite a lot. So I find a way to say that tactfully is to say, I feel as though I really want to be your friend. And based on what I've read and based on what I can see, I think you need more than a friend. So then I can just be a friend. I don't need to play half psychologist, half counselor. So clarify your role with the person to say, I want to be your friend. But if you're feeling suicidal, if you're feeling like so look out for the symptoms of PTSD, please Google that, and acute stress disorder. So acute stress is the shorter one, PTSD the longer one. Have a look for those symptoms, and if they're happening, refer to a professional. And if they get offended, talk about it. To say, it's not that you're too much for me, it's that I can't give you the best help that you need. I'm not the best person for you. I don't have the skill set for you. I'll be the one that we go, get a drink together, we go to the movies together. But it seems like you need an objective person. And it's important to refer. And there are lots of psychologists. Google psychologist near me. I'm sure this is from Pretoria Psychologist, so this will be super helpful. But yeah, I hope that helps. And I hope this is what I was tasked to do, give you some tips on how to manage being a supporter. Yeah, and I hope my details are on the website so that if you ever want to have a further conversation about this, you can call me.
Thoughts scare you or make life tough. Sometimes it feels like no one else in the world has those thoughts or feelings. No one seems to know how difficult it is to deal with your feelings. And it's not easy to share your deepest secrets. You might think something is wrong with you. Or you might worry what other people think. And all of that makes your thoughts and feelings worse. Our culture has created this environment of shame. Until the 1960s, society sent people away if they had challenges managing their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Over time, we learned that we didn't have to be afraid. We learned how to help people get better. We became hopeful. But there are remnants of those images in our culture today, which is why some people still feel uncomfortable talking about it. The stigma has taken new forms too. With more access to more people all the time, it can seem like the world is telling us it's not okay to be anything but perfect. The truth is, everyone has thoughts or feelings that can be hard to deal with. So why do we make it so difficult on ourselves by judging others who could be going through the same challenges we are? What if, instead of seeing labels, we saw people who are struggling and could be there for them so they didn't feel so alone? What if we looked past our fear of mental health and started to talk about it in a constructive way? What if, as a society, we used empowering words and healthy images to help people feel supported? Maybe then more of us could feel comfortable telling others when we're having a hard time. Maybe more people would get the help they need. And maybe one day we won't have to talk separately about mental health and physical health, but just health. The truth is, each of us has the power to change our culture. Will you join us? Share this video with a kid, your neighbor, a friend, and help us break the stigma of mental health.
As mentioned previously in my introduction, we have different professionals, and in this segment, myself, Ngateko Ndalamahoro, is interviewing Ms. Fisana Mabena, who is a frontline worker. And I think I take this special interest because I have seen the impact on different healthcare professionals in this time, because they had to be the frontline workers, and without them being able to also take time back to be able to take care of themselves. So here she is to unpack what was her experience in being an essential worker in the context of COVID-19, with the focus on her mental health. And I'm hoping this can be helpful. You can be putting your comments in your comment sections. We'll be engaging throughout this live video as we take this interview with Mefisana Mabena. Good morning, Mefisana Mabena. Maybe if you can just briefly introduce yourself to everybody who is attending this symposium, especially those who are interested in this topic, healthcare workers and their mental health. So please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone that is listening. I am professional nurse Fisana Mabena, working at Steve Biko Academic Hospital under pediatric department. But due to this COVID, I'm working under COVID, but with kids, with children. Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you very much for being here and for agreeing to do this interview with us, with Pretoria Psychologist. I'm sure it's going to be very valuable. Let's start here in terms of, for you, what does Mental Health Day mean to you?
To me, Mental Health Day, it means like we need to take care of our well-being in totality. Mental health to me is not for the people who are sick mentally, like the myth, what people think for mental health is for people who need to be admitted into a mental institution. To me, mental health is for a healthy person, for you to take care of yourself in order to adapt with what is happening in the society and as a person in totality.
Yeah. And you talking about adaptability. So I'm wondering to myself, for you as a healthcare practitioner, especially being in the front line, how has it been for you in being able to take care of your mental health? What are the resources that have been available to you, or the lack thereof, to be able to support you in your well-being, your mental well-being?
Oh, wow. It was hectic. It was tough with this COVID-19 because us as healthcare workers, we never got that preparation mentally for counseling that you're going, this is what you're going to face, this is the patients that you're going to face. We were just told that you took the pledge and then these are the patients and then they are sick. Emotionally, it was traumatizing, and there was no support in terms of health department. So the support that we got, it was a spiritual support, emotionally and psychologically. Like you just told yourself that, okay, I am a nurse and I must save these people. And as much as I must protect myself as well. It was, most of the time we were on our own. As a healthcare worker, most of the healthcare workers, we were on our own. Like psychologically support was not there. Mental health support, counseling and all those things were not there. It came after when one maybe got affected. It was not that support whereby they will tell you and make you sit down and see like, this is what happened. What kind of help do you need? There was no moment like that where you will be exposed to support.
You're talking about trauma, that for you it was traumatizing. Tell me more about how that experience of, your work causing trauma on you. What was that like?
For me personally, when I saw people dying, every day, like I will see that Hirsch coming in to collect dead bodies 4 times a day in an institution. It was so bad. It was so scary. And there was a point where I thought, like, with children, it will never happen. But unfortunately, we had a lot of children who were sick. But with God's mercy, only one child died from April to September in my unit at Tshwane. So for the children, it was, relieving, but with adults, it was hurting and it was scary. It was like, I don't know how many times will I see that car, and especially when it affected the staff workers, when you see your colleague being late, succumbing to that, it was painful. And it's even painful even now when you think of those people that you lost, that you were with them from the beginning of the COVID, from April, because we started to work there in April in that unit, but we lost something like 7 people in our institution, so it was painful. It's still hurting. It's still emotionally. I still feel that pain when I think about those months. May, June, July was never an easy month.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even now as you talk about it, I can, I mean, I can hear, even now as you talk about it, I can hear the rawness in your emotions. And when you were talking about the hash coming to take corpses, I even thought you were only talking about the patients, but here I am learning from you that you are also talking about colleagues. So meaning that loss and trauma and unpreparedness, no support was part of what was your daily experience, but yet you are or have been expected to work at your peak, at your best performance?
Yeah, definitely. We are expected actually by the line of our duty to perform accordingly. Even if you just made a guard of honor of your colleague, seeing her being lashed in a hearse, and then just after a minute after he's been gone, then you have to go back to work and nurse the surviving patient as if nothing has happened 5 minutes ago, and everything has to go smoothly, and you have to appear in front of that patient as if you're not feeling anything, like you are not hurt, like you're not crying. Like, we will cry but still nurse them, and we'll try to comfort those ones that we are nursing without even trying not to scare them, because you can tell that you are nursing a scared person, because even the PPE itself is scary. So it was not easy.
I am wondering, what about you enabled you to carry on the way you were able to carry on?
The only thing that sustained me to go on was like, I must help these people. Like, it was the pledge that I made. It was not a support that I got from the employer. It can be a support that I was receiving from the where excuse me, when we were comforting each other. Like, at least we are still here, at least we are still nursing them, like, even if you see that one of your colleagues is sick, when you see her coming back, it was a celebration in a way, like, because I remember I even got affected as well, and it was not a nice thing. I was scared, but I kept on saying, like, at least I'm not in a hospital, at least I'm better compared to them, even though I could feel the pain, I could feel some breath becoming difficult. I was worried about the person that I'm staying inside in the house with more than myself. It was tough. Like, if she could cough inside the house, I will become scared more for her than for myself, in a way.
Sure.
So it was not like, when I get better, it's like, with me, she must not get sick until I'm fine. So once I counted my days, today's my day 14, and then at least she hasn't coughed that much. Like, I will assess each and every cough in her bedroom while I'm in my bedroom.
Sure.
When I was cleared after 21 days that I can come back to work, and she was not sick, I just thank God, like, oh my God, now my niece can go back to her home, to her mom. I couldn't even tell her mother. I couldn't even tell my daughter that I'm sick. Like, because everybody was scared. Yeah. So I handled that with few people who knew that I'm sick, who will keep on calling me. Sometimes I will not even answer the call because I'm depressed. Like I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm in pain. I'm breathless. But somehow I survived. I'm here and I went back to work. And like everybody was happy that Sister Mabena is back. Then few of those who went, and like I realized when I got to the occupational health center that it was not me alone. We were so many affected.
I mean, I really, yeah, I admire your strength, and as you are relating your story, you know, I'm thinking about the resilience that you have to be able to, even in your darkest moment, your scared moment, your illness, still be able to think about the others who are ill, and, you know, still be able to think about protecting the others instead of thinking about yourself. You know, yes, I call it that it's a strength and it's you showing resilience, but I'm also thinking, can it be a weakness as well? I mean, you can tell me, you can unpack this for me. Can it be a weakness of you know, this strength that for you as a healthcare worker, as a frontline worker, as somebody who is capable and is used to taking care of others, and that can translate to you neglecting yourself and putting yourself at the back, as what I'm hearing?
Like I was saying, as a health worker, we have that tendency of taking care of the next person than yourself, which is a weak point for the healthcare workers. What I've realized, we need to have a session where, like, me first and then the next person, so that I can be able to go to the next person in a healthy manner, in a manner psychologically, totally, and healthy, emotionally and otherwise. But that's the weak one that I've realized, that we don't have healthcare workers. We don't take care of our mental status, our mental condition in a way. Like we put a lot of people first than ourselves, and it's not healthy, because you have to be right in order to serve good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it needs to be fixed.
Yeah. And maybe lastly, as part of your parting shots, what you have just said here, where you said most of the time, us as healthcare workers, we put other people first because we are caring about their well-being. We are caring about the fact that are they well before we are well. But what do you think can possibly be the negative impacts of putting yourself at the back and not neglecting yourself, as you say, not going in being totally well, but thinking of others? You know, just as a parting shot, what do you think could be possibly the dangers of doing that?
The dangers of doing that, at the end of the day, we can have two casualties. I'll end up being a patient unable to helping my next patient. So there will be a lot of patients due to negligence of mental health. You know, like if a person is not well taken care of certain stages of life, you know, emotionally and otherwise, you end up being sick, and then we add on more patients that we are having now. You end up not even having the healthcare workers or the nurses or the doctors who will be able to help the patients, because of we are all sick, and others might not even aware that you are sick mentally, you know, because of trying to be strong for others while you don't have to be strong. You have to deal with the matters.
Sure. Yeah.
So we need to try not to deal with the matters, but to not to be strong for others, but to deal with the matters in order to handle the matters.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think it's another thing that I will wish that I would love to happen in the healthcare sectors everywhere, to have a mental awareness on monthly basis or mental sessions about how do you feel as a person and as a healthcare worker. And do you still feel that you can cope? All those questions, it can be helpful for us. Like, I think it's needed everywhere to be introduced, actually, to talk like about how you feel right now, how you felt before, you know. I get inside the isolation, I come out, it's normal. And it's not nice to get into an isolation, nursing a patient for 6 hours without eating, without going to a toilet, without scratching yourself anywhere. And then when I come out, it's supposed to be life as usual. Nobody asks anything about it. Yeah, so we need a follow-up. We really need a follow-up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So actually, basically, here you're talking about debriefing sessions, where you can be debriefed about your experience, about your trauma, about what you had felt when you were in isolation, about the future, and it looks like there is no such. And I'm wondering how much aware are you about the lines, the initiative that HPSSA, the Health Professional Council of South Africa, and SAISA, and the likes of SADC, everywhere there were initiative where there were call lines and weekly webinars and sessions for healthcare workers and yeah. So I'm wondering, as you say, there need to be an awareness, and I'm wondering how aware were healthcare workers aware of the services throughout, because I myself was even on the list of people who can offer those services for free to healthcare workers, because I understood the strain and the stress and the depression that you're talking about, the trauma that all the healthcare workers, especially the frontline healthcare workers, were undergoing, not even excluding myself, but because I had those awarenesses, I was able to also reach out for help.
In terms of awareness of this access of the help, it's slim, like the information didn't reach us. Like, when you need 1, 2, 3, go to a place like 1, 2, 3. That's where you will find help. That's where you will debrief. In our facility, okay, let me speak about the way I'm exposed. In our facility, like, the debriefing, it's slim. Unless when you're sick, that's when you realize that, oh, there's this kind of a facility, this kind of help that can help me. But when you are not exposed to such, the Mwahawa failure, without you knowing that there was 1, 2, 3, which could have helped me to cope with this thing.
Sure. I think from what you're saying, this means that, days like World Mental Health Days, to bring awareness, we should not be tired of that awareness, of reaching out, because we think, because we work in this space, we think people are aware, but you are pointing out that people are not aware that there are services that are available that are like that. You only realize a year later when you are in a distressed space, that services like this are available, where else you could have maybe access them on a monthly basis or on a regular basis if those debriefings are available. So it just shows to me that days like this are just as important to bring that awareness and to really spread the word about what is available and what is the impact of not taking care of our mental health, especially for the health practitioners. So thank you so much, Me Fisana Mabena, for being with us, for bringing this into light and your own personal story, your personal journey, and being vulnerable about your infection of COVID-19. I mean, even myself, I did not know that. As you said, you were quite depressed. You did not want to take phone calls. You did not want to hear from anybody. Yeah, it's sad for me to hear that, you know, you have walked that journey with such fear and anxiety alone, so to say. Yes, I know you had support of your colleagues and other people, but it will have also, you know, it would have been great to be involved in that, for me to be involved in that journey. But thank you so much for sharing your story, and I'm hoping that your story can be helpful to others as well, in bringing that awareness to say that as healthcare practitioners, we can also be affected. We're not as strong as we want to think that we are. Even though we are strong, our strength also lacks somewhere.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kateuko. Yeah, it's true. Our story, our strength also lacks somewhere, and then your services will help a lot. Will help a lot, and then this mental health day awareness. I pray for Isaba in well, something that is more vigilant, more visible and conspicuous ka September faila, you know, ka October faila, like the 10th of October or the whole month of October. If it can be something that is done like or on a monthly basis. Okay, I know you have these services which are going on Wednesdays, but in the facilities, it's once a year, you know, which is killing a lot of people because people are dying inside, unaware, aware, but they don't know where to go, what to do because of the facility doesn't provide such. So it will be highly appreciated to have more of these sessions all over, not in a certain specific area only. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening to me. Yeah.
It's really, and again, if you want to talk,
that's life. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
through that, I really appreciate the support because I can even see some aftermath, you know, the post-traumatic, because now, like a personal one, what I've observed about myself is ha ke kopana le batho ka bataka, a ke nyake ba nkgome, you know, you can see that it's psychological. There's something left in me, you know, which need to be dealt with, not to be ignored. Yeah, so I'll visit. I'll pay you a visit. Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. It's much appreciated.
Okay. Thank you. It was nice. Bye.
Bye.
Greetings everyone, my name is Manogo. Thank you so much for joining us here at Pretoria Psychologist for our annual symposium. This year's topic is access for all. So a special thank you to everyone who contributed immensely to making sure that the symposium becomes a success. So I would like to extend my words of appreciation to our practitioners here at Pretoria Psychologist, those who worked in assisting with interviews, and I would also like to thank those who participated during the interviews, and I would also like to thank our technical team. There was so much of work that they did to make sure that the symposium becomes a success, and a special thank you to the presenters Mbewe and Sarah, who discussed the topic of the taboo associated with seeking mental health in our Black communities. And I would also like to thank Jackie, who talked about mental health of our educators, and Maxine also, who addressed the topic of supporting our loved ones or those that we live with when they experience traumatic events, and Gadego, who talked about the well-being of our health practitioners, especially those in the front line. And a special thanks to Sister Fisana Mabani for taking part in the interviews and just being part of the symposium. Thank you so much to our viewers at home. We hope that you enjoyed the symposium and you've learned a lot from it. So please feel free to comment in the comment section. You can ask any questions related to mental health or anything that you feel you need help with. And also feel free to make use of all the resources that has been shared with you and where you can get help from. Like SADAG, there's information that has been shared about SADAG, FAMSA, Lifeline, and also remember that even us here at Pretoria Psychologist, we offer monthly support groups, so feel free to make use of all the information that has been shared with you. Remember to check us out on all social media platforms for more information about our services, and you can also just call us to get any information that you may need about access to mental health. Thank you so much for joining us this year. See you next year.